episode of Wild and Well Together with Becca and Jen. It is Her Huddles, and yeah, we're excited to greet the week. We have kind of been in flux over the summer as we figure out where we're going and what we've been up to and just being present with our families and adjusting. But we're back in it and for episode 32, and we are excited. We're getting close to our Mersogi, our 100th episode, which is amazing between all three sessions, but really stoked to be here. And today's episode is about together. When we named the podcast, we named it Wild and Well Together. This idea of whether we're wild, whether we're well, bottom line is we do life together. And that means in the good, the bad, the ups and downs, and all arounds. So coming in today, then talking about togetherness, I know we have journal prompt. We have some questions that we're going to go through. But before we get to the importance of doing life in community, doing life together, and the neuroscience behind that, what is our unpopular opinion, Jen?
Unpopular opinion is favorite, like cold or frozen summertime dessert, either popsicle or ice cream.
Is yours, or those are my only two options?
Those are the two options, unless I'm missing like a major category. There's probably another major category I'm missing, but those are like the first two that came to my mind.
Love it. Mine would be a milkshake. I come from a family of, let's call them ice cream connoisseurs. That's just not my jam, but I do love it in the form of a malt or milkshake. So mine would be a chocolate malt if I could go just like whatever I want and stuff. So, but I'll call it what it is too on like a really easy scale. We grew up with Otter Pops and like frozen pops and bomb pops and all of that. The fun thing is you can see my blurred background if you're watching this. If you're not, I have a blurred background because I'm in a hotel room because we just went through Iowa and now we're in Minnesota. You know me, don't want to miss out on a good fam vacation or an opportunity to travel. So my parents are going to a wedding and they have a cabin on a lake in Minnesota for the weekend. And so they're like, who wants to come? There's room if you want to come. Not to the wedding. We're not crashing the wedding, but we are going to go on a lake. And so I put the kids in the car and road trip. Nick flew out for a few days for work and different things, but we are here. But the fun part is, the reason I'm going to say that, we drove through Iowa. Lamar's, Iowa is considered the ice cream capital of the world. I found out on my way here. I've never been through it before, but it's where all of the like bomb pops and Blue Bunny, think like rocket pops, like red, white, and blue. Many of our ice cream sandwiches, the yummy ice cream cones that then have like chocolate fudge on top and then have the nuts in, and you like pull them out, in a 12 pack or whatever. So all of those come from Lamar's, Iowa. And so we went there and my kids loved it. And I think Marcus got a superhero flavor, of course, and Lulu got straight chocolate, my girl. So, and then I had a milkshake. So that's our fun summer thing. But I also can get down with a 10-cent Otter Pop or whatever the cost would be of those penny for penny and stuff. But what about you? Unpopular opinion, what's your favorite go-to?
Ice cream. It's ice cream for me. Yeah. I don't like the fruity popsicle stuff. I don't do like fruity flavors really. I think I just like fruit is fruit, and that's kind of it.
Like, don't freeze it.
Yeah.
Here's a life hack for all the parents out there that one of our friends told us. It's exactly against what you just said, but I'm going to throw it out there because we're all about giving life hacks to each other and doing life together. So, Lulu really struggles to eat. Our daughter really struggles to eat fruit. She'll eat sometimes, but she can crush them in a smoothie form. And then I can add in spinach. I can add in a whole lot of other things. I could add in protein powder if I wanted, things like that, if she needed it at different given times. But so that being said, this summer now we've transitioned because then Mark is like, I don't really want, our son is like, I don't really want smoothies, more smoothies, Mom. Just give me them how they're made, except for if they're in that popsicle form. So my sister, she was like, pour them into these like old school molds, like where you just put them in. We used to do them. Let's go back to the 90s. We used to do them where you'd get like frozen concentrate, like juice concentrate, and pour them in, add a little water, pour them in, and then they'd freeze. Well, this is a little healthier where we actually do real fruit and stuff going into it. But it's been awesome because it's allowed our kids to eat the fruit this summer. So I hear you, but for the moms and dads or people out there that have kids that are like, I want a popsicle, blend up some fruit and throw it into popsicle form and you'll get some fruit in your kids. So that's been a part of our summer.
Yeah, you never know. You never know. And you never know what variety or like form you can get a kid to eat something. So it's like great to have hacks and options in your back pocket.
For sure, right? Like that's the reality. And we're all just trying to do life as best as we can. And so um let's get into it then as far as like being together. When you think of, we'll go into food and ice cream first, just to blend it, if you will. But when you think about your siblings and like family gatherings and stuff, I can say no one in my family really will put down dessert. Like they'd say yes to any of them. But what about your siblings and your parents? Like my family is hard ice cream. Yes to popsicles, but fast and hard for ice cream. What about y'all?
Same, exactly the same. Like you could put like tubs of ice cream in front of my family and like we could crush it in a night, like combined. Yeah, it's a talent. Yeah.
And do you have a go-to flavor or no?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I like a variety.
You don't discriminate. Love it.
Right.
Love that about you. Cool. Let's get into it then. We'll go into the neuroscience for a minute, like we like to. One of the really two things here. One, we were made for community. We were made to operate in villages. We were made to be in the space that in the neuroscience realm we call co-regulation. So if I'm a person who's highly energized or feeling anxious or zzz is the best way that I tell my kids, if I feel like my body can't settle, if there's another person in the room that can ground down or is a calming presence, we actually gravitate towards on like a molecular level. We gravitate towards that, and our own nervous system often then learns how to feel safe and how to regulate. The inverse side is for those of us that grew up in households or in current households where it's constantly chaos and our body didn't understand how to do that, we feel that then often. Or maybe we were the ones that had to learn how to ground down and how to be that calming presence. But this idea of co-regulation of our bodies need each other and respond to each other on an energetic level. And some people might be like, that's woo-woo. And it's science actually as well. And so saying like, sometimes the greatest gift that we can give someone is not advice, is not like talking at them, but rather just being next to each other and offering them a nervous system that they can borrow. And I know that that might sound cheesy, but very pragmatically speaking, think about when we're with, like for our community right now, think about, and when you're listening to this, when we've had a hard day and we walk through the door and a friend or a lover, a mom just gives us a massive hug or just sits next to us on the bench, or we get into our car and we just slump down. Like our body just needs that regulation, that system to say, and so when we do life together, yes, it's fun. I mean, it's so fun to do life together. And also though, our bodies need that for survival. And so really thinking through who are some of the best people in our own lives that have really brought us out of hard times, who have really met us in hard times, and also are just a good time to be with. For me, I have some friends, my siblings, and the rest of my family. I have some really solid people in my family, which I'm grateful for because I realize that that's not always the case. But who for you, I'll get back into mine, but who for you is a go-to, is doing life well with?
Yeah, I think for sure my husband, it's an easy one. And at the same time, it's not always a given that your spouse is that. So I recognize like the gift that is that for me. And then I have a couple really close college friends that I would say are similar, that are, especially having that sort of historical connection. I think there's a lot of not explaining, that you have to do with historical togetherness, I think.
And I think as you brought up college, and for sure I'll go into my hubby because we know that he's a grounding force in my life. For all of those that are just getting to know me, I'm like the balloon and he's the rock and I'm like bouncing around. Thank goodness we're tethered together, but I'm more of a free spirit and he is very, very grounding, which I'm forever grateful for. And then as far as like historical things in college, man, I think because we did life together, and I'll call it what it is. It was years that were formidable and allowed us to learn without cell phones. So I'll call it that, without video. So we like learned and we did dumb things. We did fun things. We did things that were just a part of growing up. And I'm forever grateful because those girls stood by my side, or as I went on different dates with people, or as I made different choices and they're like, what? And then also we had to do life side by side and apologize for some of the choices we made, or have just done life for so long that then we've seen, again, the ups, downs, and all arounds of each other. And so I think that there is something to be said. Man, we talked about that in our like one of our first 5 episodes, I don't remember which one was on relationships, but this idea of not having to explain what you just said right there, I think is the greatest gift of like just, and not that we're mind reading either. I think that there's maybe there's like an avenue in between or a space that's held in between of having to explain and having mind. Say it again.
It's almost like a knowing. Like there's just so much knowing that exists there.
Yeah, exactly. And so there isn't like, again, it's not mind reading and it's not like an expectation there. It's just, yeah, sitting in that in between of just like, let's do life. Let's do life. One of Nick and my mentors and I were talking, and a phrase that I've started to use more and more is how are you being with some of my clients and just different people rather than like, how are you doing or how are you? Because often when we ask how are you, it brings us into emotions, which is fine. However, like we can't, the more we learn to not let our emotions dictate us, they can indicate that something's going on, but not dictate how we live our life or the choices we make. Being is more of an existence of oh, I feel like I'm known. And so in that, then I can operate in a way that does co-regulate, or I can operate in a way that does have confidence, or I can operate in a way that is steadier than if I'm just like, oh, I'm exhausted. Oh, I'm sad. Oh, I'm happy. Oh, I'm exhausted, right? Like that's for a lot of us that we're exhausted or burnt out. And all those things, emotions can still be true, but like, how are you being? I guess you could be exhausted like I am, but there's more to it of like, I'm being brave, or, oh, I'm being in the place of relationship right now, or, oh, I'm being independent right now, or just there's a depth to, I think, being as well. And in that, then if we come back to the topic of togetherness, like how are we being together? What does that look like? Am I a person right now who has a lot of needs and is asking for others to really support me? There's been those seasons of life. Am I being really independent because life is just so busy? Am I being one that can give? And there's probably an ebb and flow, but coming back into that place of like generosity and where are we? And in this season of life, like, and if I think about my relationships, I'm being a wife to a husband who has a lot on his plate in a beautiful way and in a full way. I'm being a mom to a kid who's about to go off to kindergarten, which is wild. I'm being a mom to a daughter who's just super content and this little wildflower, wild child that just loves life and is so fun to be around and has a lot of energy. And then like I'm being in a season where I'm trying to figure out what I want to do professionally while I really enjoy the personal world. And so like those are some of the things that I think about relationally with myself, with a higher spiritual power, which we've talked about for me is God, and then with the people around me. What about for you? Yeah, what are some things that are coming up with you as far as togetherness and being together with people?
You know, I think the what you were saying at the beginning about how togetherness can just be the simple act of showing up and being with somebody and not having like the right script and words to say or things like that. And like the idea of truly just borrowing or like leaning on someone else's nervous system. I hope that if you're listening to this, that it almost removes some expectation from you too, for how you can show up for other people. And, you know, you don't have to be together and connected with others. You don't have to have the right thing to say at all times. You don't have to know exact timing when is the right timing to say a thing or to show up for a thing. It's just sometimes just showing up. And like you said, I think what is standing out to me there is like, hopefully that is encouraging to us in a way of like, wow, yeah, I don't have to show up in the like most perfect way. Truly just the act of showing up and being there can really just achieve togetherness. And I think that is something that is a good reminder for all of us. Cause I think so often we do get in our own way or almost like in our own heads about how to show up and like, would it be welcome? Am I going to know what to say? Is it going to be the right time to say it? And it's like, let those things subside. And how could you just be together with a person? And how might like that permission of just letting someone tap into your nervous system be something that feels more approachable?
Yes. It's funny because as you started that, I was like, oh, we could talk about oxytocin and the emotion there, and the regulation there, and I'll talk about that hormone in a minute. But I think that that's like the fun part about doing this with you is that although my background is in the neuroscience, you show that it's innately within us to understand that.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and I'll get into oxytocin because it's the bonding hormone, and I was going to share on that in a bit. Prior to getting there, though, is unless you've done neuroscience studying, which I don't think you have because you're a brilliant marketer and stuff, is exactly that. Like, we fear so often rejection, or like, what if a person doesn't want to be my friend, or like even be in this conversation, let alone the friendship and the trust there. But do I actually go and sit and be by someone because maybe they just don't want that, or maybe I'm too much, or we start to get in our head of this or that. And from a molecular, from a biological standpoint, hormonal standpoint, that's where then oxytocin comes in, and our bodies need that. So as you were sharing that, both entities, whether we verbally say it or not, to your point, our bodies are saying, yes, I need this. Like, connection is not just emotionally comforting, biologically it heals us. And so we could say like, no, I don't need it. But then some of our closest friends just show up, or our husbands show up because they're like, stop. Like, you say you don't need it verbally. I hear those words coming out of your mouth loud and clear. And yet I see you just like molding and forming into this space when I do show up for you.
Yeah.
Or like, and I think I see it a lot too as I travel, right? My kids, it could be at a grocery store even too. Like, my kids are like, why do you say hi to people? Or why do you like, wave or make a motion to connect with someone? And it isn't always verbal. And they're like, sometimes I don't wave back to you or whatever. And I'm like, because if I see someone, I want them to know I see them. Like, there's a piece innately within me that I need that. I'll call it what it is. It's mutual. I need that to say like, oh, I recognize you. And if they respond, awesome. It's going to increase my oxytocin like we just talked about. Also, though, we are designed, and how many people get social interactions? Like, I have a 4 and a 5-year-old. I like get physical touch all the time, so many times where I'm almost touched out. But for a lot of us, that's not a reality. Or I get to be in presence with kids and people so much of my day. And for other people, it's so rare to actually be in conversation. And as a mom, even when I am around my kids, it doesn't mean that I'm being seen necessarily. And I love them and adore them, but it might be the give and give and give of togetherness. So then when Nick gets home, it's just a giant hug. Or when I see my mom, it's a big like, hello, how are you? Or sometimes it's even just like, let's sit and be. Like, we can just sit outside and chat. So I think from your standpoint, that encouragement of going back into like the social bonds, we need it. We need it as a human existence. And so how do we just recognize that and then be brave enough to go ahead and say the hello, or call the friend, text the friend, and just say like, thinking of you, or love you, even something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it has a bigger impact than I think sometimes we think it does.
Yes.
And that's a good thing to remember. And also, I think remembering times when someone has done it for you, that can serve as a reminder of that impact and how you can equally have that impact on others.
For sure. And I think if anyone needs confidence in this too, of like, man, is it worth it? Is it not? There's almost a superpower behind it to know now that like oxytocin is a reminder that our bodies strengthen each other's, or our connectedness strengthen each other's. And so if it's like, even if someone's like, my greatest fear is that someone would reject me and not want to be around me. The reality is even if verbally they say that, I actually have the superpower to heal them. And you have the superpower to heal me, and our bodies have that. So whether someone actually wants that or not, and again, we're not getting into like being a stalker and showing up, like we'll call that what it is, like stage 5 clinger. However, like the confidence in the natural meeting of people, or the natural showing up for our friends in our community, that heals. And that allows on a biological level for oxytocin to raise, for us to start to have co-regulation, for us to find space with each other. And in a world that is so divided and disconnected and also just screaming at each other, man, imagine that if like a full force, they're like, our force is to just show up and be calm in these meetings. Our force is like just to show up in these war zones and de-escalate, right? There's teams that do that, and it's a beautiful thing. That's the training in it, is how do we de-escalate before we ever converse. One more life hack that I'll say for parents as we're listening and engaging, because that's a large group. And this actually can work in anything. In conflict resolution, often, or in discussions, we go to prove our point rather than to hear. And if something is getting escalated, taking a deep breath and being the person that pauses and brings us down. Like we can roll our shoulders down and back. We can be the person that like takes deep breaths. We can be the person that starts to calm and lower our voices. Anytime that happens, it's going to again match the energies of the people around us to allow them or meet their energies and allow them to start to calm too, because their body in those moments and our bodies in those moments when screaming is happening or when high elevated conversations are happening, our body comes back down. So if a kid's being unsafe or if a person's screaming loud, us being that force that allows them to calm by us calming ourselves first, then 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 50 seconds down the road, we can start to get back into conversation. But first, before we ever get into that conversation, we have to calm our bodies, because all it's going to be is noise if we're both dysregulated, if we're both amped up and stuff. So that's just a reminder. Again, it's funny that we got into more of the body language and discussions of connectedness rather than togetherness and sharing all of our bestie stories and showing up for one another and stuff. But I do think that that's just so important to remind ourselves that we have the power to regulate and we have the power to calm a space and also really enjoy life. Like that's the other piece, right? Togetherness. Man, I think about some of the fun stories that I have with my college buddies or like growing up with my siblings and road tripping again, Motel 6 on the way, like whatever. We didn't care. It just was a pool, a hotel that had a pool. Like I didn't care that it wasn't the Four Seasons and stuff. I have different preferences now and stuff, but I would say like showing up and doing life together, creating memories is the power and stuff. And so what about for you though? I know you have a few different questions, or if you want to go into stories, yeah, what do you have for us?
No, the only thing I was thinking is, also to what a cool thing to be known for. And in terms of like legacy, in terms of being known as somebody who is sort of like an initiator of togetherness and that does cultivate that. I think that is something that I think about a lot, which is like, do my friends or do people around me know me as somebody that does initiate and want to be together and seek out that connectedness? And so I think that that's something to personally think about as well. Like oftentimes, we wait for the invitation or the togetherness feeling when we can be the initiators of it too. And that's I think a beautiful sort of power that we can have as well, is bringing people together and being known for living a connected life in that way.
Dang, Jen with the hot spot. I love that. That's in our control, right? Is to do that. And I will say like publicly, that is something that I hope to in the long run, right? Is I think of my mom, she's a glue. Like she's a glue that holds our little family together and the extended space. And yeah, that's a gift to offer that to the world. And so how do we do that if that's something we desire? And I think that's is something that each person does innately, right? And so I'm like, yep, how do I do that now in a better way? Or what's the first step I can do to get there? And but yeah, I mean, I think about my husband and he's the most grounding person I know. He's the most calming person. And here's the other fun thing is that he doesn't speak ill of other people because he just doesn't need to. He's like, I see the importance of them, or if there's a disconnect or there's something that's not my preference, then I just don't need to bring it up. Otherwise, I'm in it to win it. Like I believe in humanity and stuff. So in a world that is again so divided and just feels divided rather, I think we actually are much more connected and need that space and stuff. So that's so good. How do we show up in the legacy of it? What do we want to be known? Because we want to be known as human beings. That's part of us innately. And so how do we meet others knowing that biologically others need us and we need each other? And so socially, what does that then look like as an initiator, as a person who says, let's gather?
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Any other questions or journal prompt? And then the journal prompt, of course. What are you thinking?
Yeah. Journal prompt for this week is sort of continuing on that thread. Where am I waiting to be invited into togetherness when I could be the one who reaches out and initiates it?
So good.
Yeah.
Where can I reach out? That's awesome. Man, it's so fun to have. Yeah. We have one more next week, and I am excited to go through our Masogi, our 100th episode. We're right there on the cusp of it, especially the work that we've done since last October, which is crazy. So We will sign off here for this episode and then have more to come next week. But Jen, you are a gift to us, listeners and community. We're forever thankful for you as well. And this is another episode of Her Huddles. Be well, y'all. Have a good week.
See you, everybody.